Hello, I'm Anne Pollard, and this is the reading of my book, Cleo's Fabulous Adventures, The Realm of the Woods. Chapter 5, Chamuel the Coyote. Bacchus rose from the rock and crossed the stream. Cleo followed, this time sure afoot so that she didn't step into the water. They walked silently through the woods. There were no sounds and no animals, only the trees that lined the path and some occasional foliage. As they continued on, the landscape began to change. The trees became sparser until there were no trees at all. The green foliage changed into grass, and before them a prairie emerged. The land was flat, covered in various types of grasses, and you could see for miles. There was a small breeze that blew the grasses back and forth, swaying to the sounds of the wind. And there were sections of the landscape where very little grass even grew, and it was instead desert-like dirt and rocks. As they continued, Cleo began to see little mounds of dirt with what looked like little heads sticking up out of the top of the mounds. Then she started to hear chatter from the little heads. It sounded like little squeaks, short bursts, and high-pitched. Then it became louder as the squeaks turned to more of a louder call, almost like a hawk. "What on earth are those?" Cleo asked, and laughed. Bacchus said, "Those are prairie dogs. They're funny, aren't they?" "Yes, they are so cute," Cleo replied. As they continued to walk, the prairie dogs would come out of their mound, watch for a moment, then dive back into the ground. There must have been hundreds of them. Cleo laughed as she watched them scurry from mound to mound, squawking and chattering back and forth to each other. It was fun to see them running around, their big eyes always looking around for what might be looking for them. Cleo and Bacchus laughed as they moved along, watching the little guys everywhere. And then in an instant, all of the prairie dogs dove into their mounds. In the blink of an eye, the landscape was completely void of their little bodies and chatter. Cleo looked over at Bacchus and said, "Do you think we scared them off?" Bacchus chuckled and said, "No, I don't think it was us. I think it was him." Cleo looked around and saw what Bacchus was talking about. A coyote was coming across the prairie. He had a sleek body, a slender muzzle, and a long bushy tail. His yellow eyes were piercing, and his pointed ears stood straight up on the top of his head. His fur was a subtle combination of all shades of browns, tans, and a few black spots, and he had a black spot at the end of his tail. He blended so well with the landscape that he seemed to have been born from the ground itself. The coyote was trotting toward Bacchus and Cleo. His gait was smooth but determined. He was stunning. Bacchus waited until the coyote was only a few feet from them. Then he said, "Hello, Chamuel. It's so good to see you again after so long. Thank you for coming." Chamuel said, "Hello, Bacchus. It is good to see you too, my friend. I am pleased to be here with you and Cleo. It is a special privilege to be part of the awakening journey. I'm happy to support in whatever way I can." Bacchus turned to Cleo and said, "Cleo, this is Chamuel." Cleo nodded toward Chamuel and said, "It's so nice to meet you." Chamuel had a faint aura of pink all around him, and Cleo felt the strongest vibration of unconditional love. The prairie dogs that had disappeared so quickly were now coming back out of their mounds to see Chamuel. Their chatter was fast and loud, telling the others that it was okay to come out. Since it was Chamuel, the prairie dogs felt safe to show themselves. They even seemed to be reverent. Chamuel looked toward Cleo after gazing around at the prairie dogs. "They are such amazing animals, aren't they? And like coyotes, they are truly wise and attentive, but they know how to have fun as well. I love spending time with them. But I am not here for them today, Cleo. I am here for you." When Chamuel said that, the prairie dogs began to dispense and go about their business. Chamuel laughed and looked back at Bacchus and Cleo. "Shall we walk?" he said. Bacchus and Cleo nodded at the same time, and they began to walk with Chamuel. Cleo was in the middle, Bacchus on her left, and Chamuel to her right. She suddenly felt very tall. As they walked, Chamuel asked, "Cleo, what do you think of this amazing journey that you're on?" Cleo thought for a minute and then said, "It's all quite a lot to take in, to be honest. There's so much I don't understand, but I have met some amazing animals, and I'm beginning to at least get the hang of that. Bacchus assures me that I will understand more and more." Chamuel nodded in agreement. "Indeed, you will, Cleo. Indeed, you will. I think it's time for your next lesson. Bacchus has talked some about this, but I will help make it real to you. We are all born into a place of unconditional love. That is the default you have in your heart. It comes from the unconditional love of all that is. As we grow up, we're influenced by thousands of years of ancestral history, as well as the influence of the people and places where we grew up. And sometimes that influence causes us to forget about that unconditional love. But it's always there. You can always recall it if you feel from your heart. That is where it lives, your heart. That is where your power is. But things happen to us along our path that cause us grief and trauma and sadness. And that is a very different frequency than love. We build barriers around our heart to protect us, thinking that if we push down the grief and sadness so we don't have to feel it anymore, it will go away. But that's not what happens. When you push those feelings away, they are still stored in your body, and that's not a good thing. Cleo started thinking as Chamuel was talking. She thought about the immense grief she had when her parents had died. It was so painful and sudden, but she had gotten through that, she thought. Or had she? And as she thought about all of that, tears began to well up in her eyes. Chamuel said, "It's okay to be sad, Cleo. Grief is something we all go through at times in our lives. It can be a very strong emotion, but it can also be very transformative. It's good to feel the emotion, even just be in that grief for a while. Honor what you are feeling. It's important. Just don't stay there for too long, because if you do, that's when you get stuck." "Do you feel like you're stuck, Cleo?" "Well, I didn't think so, but maybe I am. How would I know?" she asked. Chamuel replied, "If you are stuck, the emotion will come back again and again. Something will happen to trigger that feeling or thought, and you will begin to feel that same emotion in your body. Did you feel that emotion this morning when you were almost hit by that car?" Cleo was quiet and thought about what Chamuel said. Did she feel that emotion? Wasn't that just being scared and angry? "Well, I did feel something this morning, and yes, it did feel a lot like the sadness and anger I felt when my parents were killed." "That's good, Cleo. Understanding and honoring your feelings is really important," said Chamuel. "Your lesson is to know how to deal with those feelings so you can get back to your heart and your power. Would you like for me to help you do that?" Bacchus could sense the emotions that Cleo was feeling. She was confused and hesitant about this whole thing and wondered what she should do next. So Bacchus said, "Cleo, you have the free will to choose to do whatever you want. I told you that at the start of this journey. And what you choose to do will be the right thing. If you feel you're not ready, then we will wait until you are more comfortable." Cleo took a deep breath and said, "I think I would like to understand more and see if I'm ready to follow your guidance." Bacchus looked at Chamuel and said, "Okay, Chamuel, let's explain what Cleo can do to work through the emotions, and then she can decide if she's ready to move forward." Chamuel said, "I think that's a good path forward. Cleo, let me tell you a way to address your emotions and see if it feels right to you. Then, first, acknowledge it from a different perspective. When you're in an emotion, it's hard to see things clearly. Your mind and your body are immersed in the emotion, and it may seem you can't see a way out. If you take a step back as best you can and look at yourself feeling the emotion, you begin to get a higher perspective. It's like if you were another person looking at yourself. In other words, when you're in the emotion, you're an actor on the stage, playing a part in a drama. You embody the role of sadness and you're deeply in that emotion. But if you see yourself as someone in the audience watching the play, then you will understand that it's just a play, and you can choose to follow that actor or not. As you choose the role of the observer, you can then separate yourself from the emotion, and that's when you can call in your power. When you're ready to release that emotion, here's what you can do. You can see the emotion as energy, and you can change that energy into something that supports you in a positive way. Close your eyes and do your breathing. Then see that emotion as a big ball of energy, because in reality, that's really what it is. Then pull that energy to your heart. Acknowledge that it's there and thank it for what it showed you and the lessons it taught you. Then imagine the energy becoming an incredible ball of light. It's so bright that you can barely look at it. Then imagine that ball of light has become unconditional love. You have transformed the emotion into love through the power in your heart. And as you see that and feel that, release it out to the universe and send that love to the world. It will stay with you in your heart, and it will be released to others who also need that love. You can do this with any emotion that feels dense and not supportive of your happiness. And when you release that emotion, your body will release it as well, and the triggers will dissipate. The more you practice, the better you get. And remember, there could be layers of emotion wrapped up in what feels like just one emotion, so you may have to do this several times to work through all of the emotions. And as new traumas come into your life, you can use this to ease the pain of them before they get too big to deal with. Cleo thought about this for a long time. Then she said, I'm not sure I understand everything you just said. I understand the part about being an actor in a play versus being in the audience. I think I can practice that. But I don't think I understand the ball of energy and changing that into love and releasing it to the universe. It sounds a little woo-woo to me. Yes, I can certainly see that, chuckled Chamuel. You still have a lot to learn about your power. Let's leave it there for now. If you become the observer in your life story, that's a great start. The rest will come in time when it's supposed to. Thank you for trying, Chamuel, said Cleo. I'm sure it's great advice, and I will try and remember what you said. The other best advice I can give you is to laugh. Life should be fun, not taken too seriously, so remember, laughter can be great medicine, said Chamuel. Think about the prairie dogs when you need a smile. We are all here for you always, in every moment. You only need to ask for our help, and we will be there. Chamuel turned to Bacchus and gave him a low bow. Thank you, Bacchus, for including me in your journey with Cleo. I hope I have been able to bring you love. Until we meet again, I wish you joy and peace. And then he turned and loped back to the prairie dogs to have a little fun. Thank you for joining me. Have a fabulous day.